Hello, Jimmy here, and welcome to this latest edition of Medieval Fake News. It's the Telegraph coming in with the news. If you've been paying attention to the medieval internet over the last few weeks, you've probably heard that Yale University over in the USA has officially declared the Vinland Map a fake. They've officially released a statement saying that it is fake, it's a modern attempt to make a Mappa Mundi, and we're going to dig into that a little bit. So the Vinland Map first comes to prominence in the 1960s with a book in 1965 that's published by Yale, and the reason this book is published the way it is published is because 7 years before, in 1957, they have... 8 years before, in 1957, they buy this map, which they buy from, I believe, an Italian antiquity map type dealer who had tried to sell it to the British Museum, and they basically kicked him out and told him not to bother again. So Yale bought it for something like $500,000, which they got from one of their alumni, one of their former students, who wanted to be anonymous and didn't want anyone to know, and the whole thing was secret, the whole thing was secretive. Yale wouldn't let anybody in to do any testing, they didn't publicise that they'd bought this map, but they thought, we've got possibly the earliest map showing North America, so we have to publish a book on this. So they got a load of people in, none of whom were genuine experts in the subject, none of whom were leading authorities in 16th century maps, and they published this garbage book, basically, on the Vinland map, saying it's a 16th century map, it's totally real, oh my god, look, it has Vinland on it, which is where the Norse got to in the 11th century with Leif Erikson, and this is clearly showing all of this amazing information that we previously didn't know. As soon as the book comes out, it is panned. Like, everybody says, no, this is super fake. Like, no way. This is absolutely not a real map. Why weren't any of us allowed to test it? Why weren't the leading map experts and cartographers at the British Museum and at the various other museums allowed access to this? It's not real. So they organised a conference and finally allowed people to start testing it, and it was discovered that the ink on the map was modern ink, which is the death blow. Every university and museum expert worth their salt on the planet basically said, this is hot garbage, don't trust the Vinland map, it's not real, the ink is modern, the paper that it's made out of, the parchment that it's made from has this weird chemical coating on it that's definitely not original. No, this stinks to high heaven. However, it's taken Yale until 2021 to officially recognise that this is the case and that it's a fake, and to publish that. So how come? Well, first we're going to look at the map itself. So the Vinland map is what's called a Mappa Mundi, a map of the world, and these were really popular in the Renaissance and early modern periods because they show all these exciting new places that white people are exploring for the first time, hooray, and exploiting for their natural resources and people. So the Mappa Mundi becomes this really big artistic craze. Lots of people create Mappa Mundis, lots of cartographers are making these new world maps with all these new places that they may never have seen or been to, but the map that we have here, the Yale fake map, is a map that shows a couple of things that are really obviously not of the period. And the first and biggest one is Greenland. So Greenland, in real life, in a satellite image, looks like this. A late Victorian map of Greenland, in an atlas, looks like this. And the green outline is what's on the Vinland map, because that shows Greenland as an island. What's the problem with that? Well, a lot of the areas of Greenland on the map weren't surveyed properly until much later. In fact, nobody circumnavigated the island of Greenland properly until I think 20 years ago. Some of you guys might know that if you're fans of exploration or anything like that. Greenland is a problem because at that time, in the 16th century, in the early 16th century, which is when this is meant to be from, Greenland was just a colony of Norway. It was a Norwegian colony. Look how perfectly Greenland is drawn. Look how shoddily Norway is drawn. It sucks. That's not even close to Norway. Norway has the, floopy snoot on top of Denmark. It is the floopy snoot that forms that little... It's crap. It's so bad. Like, that is one of the main reasons people looked at this map and went, bull. So as well as that, the ink that is used to make this map isn't just a normal, what we would expect to find, oak gall ink. And I've made oak gall ink before. I have a video where I make oak gall ink, and oak gall ink makes this lovely colour, this beautiful, rich, dark black colour. But this stuff was full of titanium. Absolutely not an early modern ink. So this ink, full of titanium, is completely modern. It was really obvious right from the start when people were first allowed to take samples from it in the 1960s, in like the mid to late 1960s, a decade after the British Museum rejected it. One of the reasons the BM rejected it is because of the handwriting. So they took a look at the handwriting. Their calligraphy experts basically said, no way, this is no older than 19th century because of some of the handwriting techniques being used here. Some of the naming conventions, for example, Leif Erikson is Latinized to Erisonius in a very 17th century Italian way, which made all the experts in naming and in 15th century Latin go, this seems bogus. Add to that, like, some other weird stuff, like it was meant to have been rebound at some point and collected with another history book, which is genuine. The rebinding was done with plastic wire, which told the experts and everybody else that at some point this had been messed with recently. You could only get plastic wire in the 1950s. So somebody really recently had taken pages out of this book and then rebound it with plastic really shoddily. It turns out, when they carbon dated it, that the parchment appeared to be medieval. So it looked like it could actually have been genuinely a piece of parchment from the period. But the main issue here with the ink and the writing is it's made with something called anatase, which is a modern manufactured chemical that goes into modern black pigment inks. And anatase, in the volumes that it was found in the Vinland Map ink, just blows the idea that it's original out of the water completely. With all of the nonsense with Greenland, with the bad Norway, even with the fact that Japan is represented as multiple islands, which wasn't known in that period. The map that it's supposed to be based on is one from the 1430s by a man called Bianco, but what it's actually based on is an 18th century facsimile of the Bianco map, which is why it sucks. The technology required to do all of this microscopic chemical analysis takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of money, and it's difficult to get funding for it, especially if you're trying to get it done on an object owned by Yale University that they really, really don't want to be fake because they've had to get one of their former students to pay $500,000 for it. Yeah, there's a lot of politics involved. Now, in 2013, there were claims that the map was mentioned in earlier pre-1950s literature, because that's another thing to remember, is before it arrives at the British Museum, super sinisterly in the 1950s, it's never been mentioned before. It's never been heard of before. Nobody has ever mentioned this map anywhere. But in 2013, someone in Scotland tries to get everybody convinced that it was mentioned in these early modern pieces of literature. It's complete fakery. It's absolutely not true. It's never been mentioned. The two pieces that he tries to convince people it was in don't even mention a map. Then in 2018, finally, at Yale, more tests and more chemical analyses are done on it that prove that the ink is 100% modern. They also, over in Denmark, discover that the chemical coating is basically this glycerol-based chemical on the manuscript, and 95% of the fibres in the parchment have been damaged by this stuff. So it's been really roughly coated for some reason in this weird chemical treatment prior to having 20th century modern ink applied to the surface of it. Who knows why? Maybe some of you guys are better at chemicals than me and know the reason, but this is all coming out in 2021 because things take time to get published. So these papers are coming out fairly constantly. There's been a Vinland Map Symposium quite regularly since the first one in 1966, and all the way through, it's effectively been agreed that it's a fake. Fairly few people have ever believed this was a real map, but they've been rich enough and influential enough or connected with Yale enough that their opinions have been tolerated and propagated. But the Vinland Map has been in the news because Yale has finally said, okay, you know what, we've done loads of sampling, we've spent loads of money on this, everybody involved in the original affair is now dead, so it's a fake. It's super fake. In fact, to quote Raymond Clemens, curator of early books and manuscripts at Yale's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, beyond a doubt, this map, quote, was a forgery, not a medieval product as it claimed to be. So there you go. The Vinland Map, super fake. It is not the first map ever that shows North America with Vinland on it, explored by the Norsemen in the 11th century as it was written on the map. It's garbage. It's a 20th century fake. It's caused a lot of interesting debate, and it's had an awful lot of money and scientific experimentation done on it that could have been spent on a genuine artifact. And although I love stuff like this, and I really like conspiracy theories, and I like, you know, uncovering the fakes, this is damage that fake artifacts can do to archaeology and to history and to research, because it takes so much funding and so much time and so many people's brains to work this stuff out. It just wastes all of that, when we could have been making amazing new discoveries. We could have been translating ancient languages that we've never been able to crack before. We could have been repairing things that desperately need help, instead of trying to figure out if this shoddy, shambolic, fake map is real or not. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it because I like debunking nonsense, and this is a big one, and it's been all over the internet recently. Thank you so much for watching. If you are enjoying the channel, please do subscribe. Have a look at the Patreon, see if you'd like to support the channel financially. That would be amazing. Thank you to my generous patrons. You have helped me keep myself alive in the last few months, so thank you ever so much for that. And till the next time, as ever, hwyl am y tro. Bye for now.